Today, we're diving into a legal fight that really gets to the heart of what we think of as fair play. It's the story of one man, his home of 2 decades, and a question that is, frankly, unsettling. Just take a second and think about that. Can you actually be forced out of your house before you've even had the chance to argue your case? It sounds impossible, right? Almost un-American. But that very question is what the Idaho Supreme Court is deciding. And today is the day. Right now, homeowner Jeremy Bass is waiting on pins and needles for a decision that will not only decide the fate of his home, it could change the game for every homeowner in the state. So let's break down how we got here. This isn't just some technical property dispute. We're talking about a man who was physically removed from the home he'd lived in for 20 years, all while screaming from the rooftops that he never got a chance to present his evidence. Okay, so how on earth did this happen? Well, the timeline is something. It all starts way back in 2009 with a document that seems to suggest the original loan was paid off. But then, fast forward to this year, the property is suddenly sold at auction. And then, get this, just a few weeks later, he's physically removed, evicted, even though his appeal was already in the works. Which brings us right here, to today, waiting for that final word from the Supreme Court. To really get what this appeal is about, you have to look at the auction itself. Because Bass isn't just claiming a mistake was made. He's alleging the whole thing was rigged. And his entire case rests on one piece of evidence that is, well, it's pretty hard to explain away. Here's the allegation, plain and simple. Bass claims the person running the auction, the trustee, who's supposed to be totally neutral, was actually working with the bidders beforehand. And the proof? The bidders showed up to a supposedly public auction with a cashier's check already made out for the exact winning amount. And there's the number. $165,346.71. I mean, come on. How could you possibly know the final winning bid of a live auction down to the penny before it even starts? It just doesn't make sense. You'd bring a check for way more just in case. Showing up with the exact amount, that suggests the winner was decided before anyone even showed up. And that's the absolute core of his appeal. He argues in his brief that this check isn't just a red flag. He says it transforms reasonable inference into virtual certainty. In other words, it's pretty much a smoking gun for a rigged deal. So, if the evidence seems so damning, you're probably asking, why didn't the first judge see this? Well, that's where the story takes a turn, because this case became less about the evidence and more about getting trapped in a maze of legal procedure. And you have to understand, Mr. Bass was fighting this whole battle alone, not because he wanted to, but because he says he was forced to. The term is perforce pro se. He claims he was turned down by more than 125 law firms, many of them saying they had conflicts of interest. Imagine that. He had no choice but to try and be his own lawyer in this incredibly high-stakes game. And this right here shows you just how sideways things went. On the left, you see what Bass was trying to argue. Serious stuff about collusion, fraud, the whole sale being bogus. But on the right, that's what the court would listen to. Just a simple eviction case. They basically said all that fraud stuff wasn't relevant to the question of who gets the house now. It's like the court just put its fingers in its ears. At one point, the other side made new arguments in their final filing, and when Bass tried to respond, the court literally refused to even read it. They shut him down on a technicality. His key evidence was essentially locked out of the courtroom. So that brings us back to today, to the Idaho Supreme Court. This is his last shot. But make no mistake, winning here is an incredibly steep, uphill climb, especially when you're on your own. Now we've used this term pro se. All it means is that you're representing yourself. You're your own lawyer. Simple enough, right? Well, not in the eyes of the law. Because this is the rule in Idaho. The court gives you 0 breaks. You are expected to know every single rule, every deadline, every procedure, just like a corporate lawyer who's been doing this for 30 years. It's a brutal standard for any regular citizen. And to add insult to injury, the lower court didn't just rule against him. It punished him. They declared his defenses frivolous, basically a waste of everyone's time, and then ordered him to pay the other side's legal bills. So not only was he silenced, he got a bill for trying to speak up. So here we are, decision day, but there's this huge legal landmine waiting for him. Even if the Supreme Court thinks he has a point, can they actually do anything about it since he's already out of the house? It all comes down to this one legal word, mootness.
Basically, it's the idea that if the main event is already over, there's nothing for a court to rule on. It's like a referee trying to call a penalty after the game has ended and everyone's gone home. It can kill a case before it's even heard.
And that is the opposition's entire argument. They're saying, look, he's been evicted, it's done, the game is over, this case is moot. They want the court to just throw the whole thing out.
But Bass is firing back. He says not so fast. He argues the court can still provide a remedy, like damages, or even given the house back. He also makes a pretty serious claim that they rushed the eviction specifically to create this mootness problem. And maybe most importantly, he's arguing that this is way bigger than just him. This is a public interest issue, because what happened to him could keep happening to others, over and over again. So what could that decision look like today? Well, there are basically 3 ways this can go. The court could affirm, which means the lower court's decision stands and it's over for Mr. Bass. They could reverse the judgment against him, or, and this is what he's fighting for, they could remand the case. That means sending it back down for the full trial he never got, where that impossible check finally sees the light of day.
You know, at the end of the day, this ruling won't just be about one man and one house. It's a massive test for the entire judicial process. It's about what happens when one person, all alone, stands up and says the system itself is broken. And that really brings us back to the beginning. Here's a guy who believes he has concrete proof of a rigged system, but was told he couldn't even present it because he didn't follow the rules perfectly. It leaves us all with a pretty profound question. If the process itself prevents the truth from being heard, can the result ever really be called justice?